Good afternoon, members. It's already the appointed time and we formed a quorum right on the dot. We are very punctual. May I call the meeting to order? That's the panel on environmental affairs. Confirmation of minutes of our two meetings dated the 26th of January and the 25th of February, respectively. So far, the Secretariat and myself have not received any proposal for amendments. If members have no objection, can I suggest that the two sets of minutes be confirmed? Any objection? No, then the minutes are confirmed. Item 2, information papers issued since the last meeting. After the last meeting, our Deputy Chairman, Dr. Kenneth Chen, wrote me a letter on the review of the implementation of the extension of the plastic shopping bag charging to all retail outlets. The letter has been forwarded to the administration, and let's decide how to follow up after we've got a response from the admin. Dr. Kenneth Chen and also Mr. Dennis KWOK wrote to me on the 14th of April. That's a joint letter, and they would like to discuss the future development of the electricity market. I understand that the Economic Development Panel discussed this this morning at their panel meeting, and in around June they are going to meet the stakeholders. Just to let members know, and if members are interested, or if you'd like to invite any interested parties to attend that public hearing, do pay attention. This item was already discussed by the Economic Services Panel this morning. Dr. Kenneth Chen, I'd like to clarify. Is it true that all stakeholders and interested parties can take part in that June meeting? I believe all parties who are interested can take part. And if members of this panel are particularly interested, since this is related to the environment, I will request the chairman of the ES panel to allow members of this panel to attend that meeting. That's the usual practice. And may I remind members here that if you know any green groups that are interested in this topic, please let them know for the public hearing. I've just informed by the Secretariat that the chairman of the ES panel agreed to invite us to join their meeting. Okay? Please invite the administration to join us as we decide the agenda for the next meeting, which is scheduled for the 29th of May at 10:45. The administration has got two suggestions for us. First is the provision of onshore power system in Kai-Tak Cruise Terminal and the report of the task force on external lighting. Do members have any views on these two proposals? Dr. Low? Members, Chairman, I have no comment on these two items. However, can we, regarding this meeting, scheduled for the 29th of May, assuming that the filibustering on the appropriation bill is still on, or will we have to reschedule this meeting? Well, I'll make arrangements with the Secretariat. If indeed there is a sitting, theoretically speaking, we have to reschedule our own panel meeting. Mr. Dennis KWOK, do you have a question? Okay. I would like to take this opportunity to consult you on the following. Members may note that yesterday in Kowloon, there was a suspected incident related to the explosion of maintenance of LPG vehicles. So can I ask the administration regarding the qualifications of technicians for maintaining LPG vehicles? Is it within the terms of reference of our panel? If yes, can we put this item on our list of outstanding issues? if my memory serves me, I think it should be within our terms of reference. Undersecretary or Mr. Lai, Deputy Director of Environmental Protection. Thank you, Chairman. Minibuses and taxis or LPG, minibuses and LPGs were introduced by the Environment Bureau back in 1999 in a bid to improve our air quality. If members would like to discuss this, we are happy to provide paper first if necessary. We can liaise with the relevant departments, including the EMSD, to attend a related meeting. Members, do we agree that we should put it on our list of outstanding issues, or can we invite the relevant departments to give us a background paper first before we decide the way forward? Ms. Ho. Thank you, Chairman. Given that the matter was so serious yesterday, we must address this issue. When LPG taxis were introduced, it was said that in such a built-up city like Hong Kong, LPG vehicles that are out of repair could lead to serious problems. So the EB, the EMSD, the FSD, and the Transport and Housing Bureau should also be parties to that discussion. Okay. Mr. Chen Kim-po, I am on the next item. All right. Dr. Lo Kwok. We were all shocked by yesterday's accident, and we were saddened by the numerous fatalities. The relevant regulation is done by the EMSD. I understand that subsequent to the event, the FSD, of course, and the EMSD were also present at the scene to investigate the cause. And the Buildings Department is following up on the matter to ensure the structural safety of the buildings. But perhaps the issue may not be related, or we don't know whether the issue was caused by LPG vehicles. It could be caused by other gases and etc. by the Assistant Director. It might be appropriate for this panel to discuss this matter, but the matter may not be directly caused by LPG vehicles or minibuses. Mr. Stephen Ho, we are all quite unhappy, and according to many reports, the incident was caused by LPG taxis. So I agree that we should discuss this matter, but can we have an information paper from the administration prior to the next meeting? And I do agree that related departments, including the FSD and the police force and EMSD, be invited to our next meeting to explain to us the regulations, the regulatory framework, and also relevant statistics. Thank you. Mr. Chen. Yes, we have to revisit such items once every few years. Whenever there is a fatal incident, people's attention would be aroused. I think the Secretariat can check electrical records for us. We talked about the safety or the management and parking of LPG cylinder vehicles, and second, the management of LPG cylinders retail outlets, and also the berthing areas for dangerous goods vehicles. In Chunwan, outside Riviera Garden, there are many such vehicles. When Mrs. Anson Chan was the CSYA, she promised that the area would be re-provisioned, but it is still there. there are dozens of such vehicles berthed there, and should there be an explosion, the whole of Chuman and Tsingyi could be on fire. We're told that according to a study, such a risk was as low as 1 out of a few hundreds of thousands. But once it happened, it could be really disastrous. So I hope that our discussion should cover this area. Dr. Kenneth Chan, I agree that we should discuss this as soon as possible. Yesterday's explosion shocked many, and I hope that the affected victims and families could be given all the support they need. And this is not just about the vehicles themselves, the technical setups, the maintenance, and also the technicians and the safety standards and inspection by the administration are all subjects of concern to the public. Of course, we don't want to create any panic in society, but the incident has already happened. Now, we're not forcing the FSD to give us a report ASAP. If it can be done, very good, but I believe as a matter of policy, we must consider the situation of all garages in Hong Kong that can repair and maintain such vehicles. Mr. Tan Ka-pio, yesterday's incident aroused a lot of concern because the matter involved the workshop itself, the taxi driver who took his vehicle there for maintenance, the shops nearby, the neighbors. I'm sure for those who have a similar workshop near them will be very worried, and therefore we must discuss this item as soon as possible. Through the Secretariat, can we ask other panels if they have a similar concern? If yes, we can have a joint panel meeting so that we can have a focused discussion, so that more departments and can be involved, and more members can be involved to have a comprehensive discussion. Okay, thank you. In summary, I don't think members would object to our adding this item to our list of outstanding items for discussion, and that is the safety and maintenance of LPG vehicles. I had a meeting with the relevant official this morning, and according to him, this matter is still under investigation, and it's not entirely clear whether it has anything to do with the LPG vehicle taken there for repair and maintenance. So, Under Secretary, can you please consolidate for us a paper with input from different departments so that all relevant panels can take a look, and if it is related to the LPG vehicle, we will convene a special meeting to discuss it. If it has something to do with other causes not entirely related to this panel, we will put it further down our outstanding list. Do members agree, Mr. Bachan? Then I'm afraid we won't be able to discuss this even before our summer recess. I hope before we break up for the summer, we can have a meeting to discuss issues covering various dangerous goods or dangerous vehicles in town, because we don't want to have another unfortunate event. Okay. Under Secretary, can you tell us by when you can have a preliminary report so that members can have an idea what is the major cause of the incident? Can we separate the issue into two things? First, it is hard to say what's the cause of yesterday's incident because it would cover a lot of issues, including legal liability and other things. So we will allow that matter to be dealt with under the following the normal procedures. But if members do not object, we will have discussion in principle on the regulation and enforcement and the situation of dangerous goods in Hong Kong.
Besides, when we prepare our papers, we may need the assistance of other government departments. Mr. Chairman, can we do it like this? If you're willing to separate this into two issues, I'll go back and talk to our departments to see when we can give you a paper as soon as possible. Then members can decide whether or not before the summer recess you can use the paper for discussion. Because for this particular incident, we don't know yet when a report can be passed to you. But of course, if there is a report, the approach may be different. I think we all agree with the Undersecretary. So, Undersecretary and your relevant colleagues, please go back and prepare the relevant information for us. And we all agree to give priority to this subject matter. Thank you very much. Let's proceed to item 4 on the agenda, progress of air quality improvement measures. In fact, just now many colleagues have raised their hands. If you would like to ask questions or make comments, please raise your hands. Now I'll invite the Undersecretary to brief us on the paper. Please be succinct. Well, Mr. Chairman, as we spend some time on that incident, maybe members are all very clear about what questions they would like to ask. So maybe we don't need to do an introduction, because in the past several months we've gone through a number of issues in the paper already. This paper sets out quite many details, and this is a rather comprehensive report for the panel. So if Chairman you so consent, we won't do any introduction. All right, so we'll open the floor to members. 4 minutes per member, questions and answers. Mr. Chan Kim Paul and then Mr. Dennis Kwok. I'll read out your names. Chan Kim Paul, Dennis Kwok, Kenneth Leung, Sid Ho, Kenneth Chan, Albert Chan, Lo Wai Kwok, Dr. Lo Wai Kwok. Any more? All right, Mr. Chan Kim Paul. Thank you, Chairman. Well, paragraph 3 of the paper mentions that in recent times, most of the pollutants are on the decline. For SO2, a reduction of 50%. Proving that the government's effort is effective. The only exception is the increase of 28% due to regional photochemical smog problem. Can we have the details about this situation and any other causes leading to the rise of ozone emission? And then the government fully subvents bus company in the procurement of electric buses. Apart from buses, what about other modes of transport? In Shenzhen, 800 electric taxis are on the market with government subsidy to the tune of 12,000 renminbi. So will the government in the long run consider this as well? That is, to encourage people to buy electric taxis. I'll defer to Mr. Mok. Yes, Mr. Wai Chun. Thank you, Chairman. Ozone is a complicated issue because ozone does not have an emission origin. In a big region like the Pearl River Delta, vehicles, power plants, factories, etc., have burning processes generating nitrogen oxides, emit them into the atmosphere. And then we have the VOCs, emission. These two compounds, after emission, if there's sunlight, under sunlight, they will have photochemical reaction generating ozone. So to handle ozone or smog is very difficult, even in overseas jurisdictions. For the whole region, we must reduce nitrogen oxides and VOCs. And by doing so, we can reduce ozone emission in the whole region. And we must not neglect the photochemical effects of the sun. For example, in a particular year, we have strong wind. Ozone may not be improved. Anyway, the approach is to reduce nitrogen oxides and VOCs in the whole region. It's precisely because we would like to improve on ozone emission. With the mainland, we have common objectives covering nitrogen oxides and VOCs. We hope that by doing so, we can reduce the regional ozone emission, thus improving our air quality. What about electric taxis? Mr. Andrew Lai, Deputy Director, we have a green fund to subsidize experiments on green vehicles. We're talking about $100 million, and 21 electric taxis have applied, 11 electric buses, and 12 electric mini buses have applied. So by way of the fund, will subvent the industry in carrying out such experiments. Mr. Dennis KWOK. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd also like to follow up on questions previously asked by me. Then the Secretary has heard them. That is the review cycle of 5 years. Well, then the Secretary said that work has already started, but we don't have the specifics. When we start a 5-year cycle review, is it that we collect annual data to see whether there's improvement and whether there's improvement on public health? I'd like the Undersecretary to tell us what more the Bureau can do and what support they need from the LegCo. As for roadside monitoring, many councillors mentioned roadside pollution. Is the monitoring enough? Do we have enough data? And then about path model, I know that in January this year, the Bureau launched a new path model. Will they invite scholars and green groups to comment on the new path to see whether the model is better so as to enhance credibility? And the Secretary, well, on the path model, our colleagues can supplement. As the 5-year review, we can discuss it. As our colleagues are here, we can have an exchange. Previously, Mr. Dennis KWOK cited the issue to me. Well, see whether I'm correct. He said that in law, it's stipulated that we must have a review once every 5 years. His question is when we'll start the 5-year review cycle. Am I correct? Yes. Now, that was implemented in 2014, so 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017. By 2018, 5 years will have passed. So is it that we'll conduct a review in 2018, or by 2018 the review will have been completed for discussion? Is that your question? Yes. I think in the past we answered that question on paper. Maybe our colleagues can elaborate on that. That is, when are we going to trigger what system? Deputy Director, the 5-year review cycle is already spelled out in the ordinance. As for the timetable, as the Undersecretary said, we hope that in 2019, that is, we launch it in January 2014 when we launch the new air quality objectives. So we would like to complete the 5-year review by 2019. And at the end of this year, we'll give you the work plan and timetable for the review, and we'll report to this panel. Our objective is that we hope that before 2019, that is within the 5-year timetable, whether or not we're going to uphold the existing AQOs or otherwise, we'll make a decision by that time. You have another question. That's about roadside monitoring. Well, as for the 5-year review cycle, you're not going to wait till 2019 before you work. Now you're already cumulatively working on this year's air quality, public health, etc. You're conducting continuous assessment. Mr. KWOK is correct. At any time, we're paying attention to Hong Kong's air quality. Do you need dedicated staff and resources for this, or do you have enough resources now? For the upcoming review, for the time and resources required, after we have drafted the timetable, we can discuss the details with you. Next, Mr. Kenneth Leung. Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Chairman, concerning air quality, I think it is directly related to energy efficiency of our buildings. I did hear from the government that this summer we'll have a blueprint on energy efficiency for buildings. What's the progress of that blueprint, and what's your policy objective? That's my first question. My second question is also related to air quality. Apart from what's in the paper about electric vehicles, in fact, I heard that earlier the government commissioned a consultancy to study the feasibility of renewable energy. Malaysia, Philippines, etc., our neighboring jurisdictions will legislate on this. Take, for example, the sale of diesel. The biodiesel branding must be done. In US, it's 5%, in some states 10%, in Europe, some countries 7%. For biodiesel, has the government considered legislation for low sulfur diesel? We must have a mix. Will you consider that? And the Secretary, perhaps I should comment on this. Concerning green buildings and energy efficiency, the document will be published very soon. I hope that the honourable member can understand that for the time being, I can't give you the exact date. But, Chairman, it will be very soon. Secondly, about biodiesel, if we look at this from the standpoint of air pollution, it's not that effective. But if we look at it from the angle of energy and climatic change, that will be helpful. Therefore, it is possible that internally we'll discuss this. That is, from climatic change and energy efficiency, we'll see what benefits there will be. Maybe Mr. Mok can give you a more comprehensive answer. Biodiesel may not be the only answer. Deputy or Assistant Director, I'll try to answer that question. For biodiesel, in fact, its merit is that it contains less sulfur. But we all know that diesel used by vehicles are not actually containing much sulfur, so there's not much benefit. In many jurisdictions, they're not doing that for the sake of air quality. If they have high-quality diesel, then they won't introduce biodiesel. They consider a number of factors. Say if they have excessive agricultural products, then they have a lot of incentives to change the excessive agricultural products into biodiesel. And then, as the Undersecretary mentioned, they also consider the factor of carbon. They may reduce the use of fossil fuel. So that's also an incentive for using biodiesel. But in Hong Kong, concerning air quality, as I said, the merit of low sulfur does not exist. As for other factors of air pollution, that may not have a competitive edge either. And also, if we control our fuel well, then whether or not we use biodiesel doesn't matter so much. Mr. To, I'd like to follow up on Mr. Dennis Kwok's question about the 5-year review cycle on air quality. We shouldn't wait till the 5-year period ends before we conduct a review. We should, as soon as possible, look at all our facilities to measure the effectiveness of each and every facility and measure,
so that we can be all prepared for the next 5 years, so the plant can operate more smoothly. So about the replacement of diesel vehicles, according to the paper, some $3 billion have been approved, and there are 80,000 odd such vehicles in Hong Kong. You're already halfway through the program. You have already achieved half of the target. How much has our roadside air quality improved as a result of this initiative? Last term, we had 36 measures to improve our air quality. Some were more difficult, some were easier, some was all about spending money. So for replacement of diesel vehicles, you have spent money on this measure. Can you please tell us how far has our roadside air quality been improved? What are the benefits to the health of our on-street vendors? And there's low emission zones for buses. I hope the officials, we also have ocean vehicles berthing, switch off a fuel for ocean-going vehicles berthed at Hong Kong. So can you tell us the contribution of each measure after they've been introduced? And to follow on Mr. Dennis Kwok's question, what is the benefits to our public health as a result of these measures? Can you give us a quantified report? Thank you. Certainly, Mr. Ho can tell you what they are doing. First, what we have to do under the AQO review, so the members understand that we don't wait until the last day. First, we have to review our AQOs. We have to keep an eye on changes in our air quality. As Mr. So said, we've taken a number of measures. Have they been effective or not? And if they are not, then we have to find out the causes. And if we do see some effect, but they are not effective enough, we will see what other measures can be taken. These are measures that are feasible and technically effective. We have to keep an eye on the development of new technology, and we will also see whether WHO has changed the AQOs or not. All right, on monitoring changes in air quality, as Ms. Ho said, we have a number of measures in force. It is very complicated and not easy to attribute the percentage of improvement to individual measures. Please allow me more time, Chairman. So we look at past data. Before I go to changes in findings, I must say that we cannot change the air quality year on year. But if we compare the air quality of 2013 and 2014, we first look at the meteorological factors. They were rather unfavorable. More sunlight, less rainfall, and less wind, and that would aggravate the ozone problem. So in 2014, ozone was a more serious problem than 2013. Luckily, regardless, we have seen improvement in the concentration of nitrogen dioxide at roadside, all because of the measures in place. Although ozone, the level of ozone has risen. Let me explain how the concentration of ozone can affect the concentration of nitrogen dioxide. Vehicles emit NOx, which will react with ozone to form NO2. So even if we have fewer NO2, lower NO2 emissions, but because of increase in ozone, now in 2014, there was a 3% increase in ozone compared to 2013. But still, we have seen an improvement by 15% of nitrogen dioxide at roadside. We have been monitoring the air quality. And when we conduct the AQO review, we will tell you the changes. Thank you. Mr. Kenneth, Dr. Kenneth Chen. I'm sorry, Chairman. How about this? I know members are very concerned about this because together with this meeting, members have asked on a number of occasions at this issue. We plan to give you our first working report by the end of 2015. So, in that document, can we elaborate on this issue? And the process of the AQO review, I'm afraid is too difficult for colleagues to explain everything to you clearly within 4 minutes. So about 6 months down the road, we will give you a more elaborate report. And by then, if you would like to know more about the process, we can convene a special meeting. How about that? All right, then we will wait for that meeting eagerly. Ms. Ho. So I hope that the report can be submitted to us when we come back after the summer, so that at the end of this year we can have a meeting to follow up on the question of AQOs. All right. Even though it's not because of vehicle emissions, because of a high concentration of ozone and photochemical reaction would cause the level of NO2 to increase. You just put it in the footnotes and we will understand. Yes, because members have heard that argument a number of times. Now, if members have anything special in mind that you would like us to elaborate, this is to make sure that the document will not leave out anything that are close to the heart of members. Perhaps the Secretariat can give us a list. All right. Since the Undersecretary is so forthcoming, after this meeting, members can give us a list of concerns for passing over to the Undersecretary. Well, Mr. Ho, you've been chairman too, so you do understand that it's important to control time, and you have interrupted a number of times, and I have to be fair to other members. Dr. Kenneth Chen. I'd like to follow up on the progress of phasing out a replacement of commercial diesel vehicles. We have approved $11.4 billion for replacement of diesel commercial vehicles to improve our air quality. And then there is also a cap on the service life limit of all commercial diesel vehicles. So by means of a carrot and a stick as well, you would want to phase out the diesel commercial vehicles as soon as possible. Now, if we look at the overall figure, we may find it encouraging. According to the paper, over 30% of them have taken up the scheme, and about $3.13 billion have been spent on this program. But may I draw your attention to Annex B, where you have provided us with a breakdown. The total number of pre-Euro 1, 2, 3 vehicles. Now, I am particularly concerned about the situation for pre-Euro vehicles. So, according to your new legislation, they should be phased out by the 1st of January 2016. We're already at the end of April 2015. About 57 of these pre-Euro vehicles, 10,000 out of them, have received or have applied for ex gratia payments. There are about 43% left. So my question is, what are you going to do about them? The deadline for these vehicles to be phased out is still very soon, and for other stages, the deadline for them to be on the road will be 2017, 18, and 18. So the incentive for them to take up the ex-gratia payment is less. But for pre-Euro vehicles, there are still 43% out there. What measure do you have to deal with this problem, or will you just do your best and leave it to fate? The Civic Party is very concerned. The time period, the year for these vehicles to be phased out was originally 2016, 2017, 18, 19 respectively, but you have relaxed the situation. So for pre-Euro vehicles, what measures do you have to ensure that they can be phased out sooner? Mr. Lai, thank you. Yes. We have already specified the date for these different stages of Euro vehicles to be phased out. So for pre-Euro vehicles, just before Easter, we have sent out letters to vehicle owners left yet to apply for ex-gratia payment that the deadline is end of December this year, and we urge them to apply for the payment as soon as possible. We also inform the relevant trade associations, hoping that they can help us to publicize this message. And I can say categorically that we have no intention to change the program. So in addition to sending letters, what else can you do? I don't know with are these owners going to sell or to scrap their pre-Euro vehicles? Why do you think these 43% have not come to apply for ex-gratia payment? It depends on the wish of individual owners. Some owners may think that they are going to retire in a few months and they have no intention to buy a new vehicle. But of course, the scheme is delinked with the procurement of a new vehicle. So the decision is entirely the vehicle owners. But I like to remind them here that if they want to take up that ex-gratia payment, the deadline is end of this year. Ms. Albert Chen, I'm very pleased to see that the Undersecretary has taken this matter very seriously. I think from what I can see from the paper, the administration has failed to tackle the problem at source, and I don't know what you can do to tackle the problem. There are various sources of pollution. Pollutants blown here from up north, and emissions from vehicles, from ferries, as well as from airplanes. And the impact of various sources can be different at different locations of Hong Kong. I have asked the administration a number of times the emissions from airplanes, but it seems that the administration has zero information on this. So you should choose, for instance, places like Tung Chung. The various contributions by ferries, vehicles, planes, and pollutants from the north. And in Causeway Bay, I think the most serious problem is due to vehicle emissions. And for a ferry, in some places, the impact of emissions from ferries may be more serious. So at different locations, you should set up indicators, and then you should formulate plans with control measures, so everyone can see, so that I don't have to ask you the impacts of emissions from airplanes every time and giving zero for an answer. Emissions or pollution from airplanes is a very serious problem, but our administration has entirely overlooked that cause. I don't want to continue to mark time on this issue. So the Undersecretary has been very forthcoming. She asked us for things would like to be included in the report due by the end of this year, so please include this. And our secretariat, it's not that I don't trust the administration, but if our research division can help us to conduct a study, then it can serve as good reference when we have a similar report from the administration. Undersecretary, I do appreciate your concern, and in fact I share yours. So for the report to be submitted last year, a report can be written in many different ways. Please let us know your concerns. We'll try to address your concerns as far as possible.
Secondly, concerning aircraft, we do have a list of emissions. Previously, we did invite scholars, university scholars related to air quality to come and explain to you. If you want to have richer data interpretation, well, we don't have lies, but if you want to have richer data interpretation, you can invite independent experts to have a richer discussion. For aviation emission, what's the actual situation in Hong Kong? I believe university experts know the answer. Mr. Chairman, for the 2 runways, 2.34 million cubic liters for sulfur dioxide, etc., etc. Huge quantities of pollutants. You gave us a paper which somehow says that airport pollution is non-existent. I think we have to press the government to do something. For certain things you don't have powers, like aircraft pollution. We argued and argued, but in vain. So we need to follow up on a number of issues. Dr. KWOK? Thank you, Chairman. Concerning the figures in the paper from 2006 to 2014 for the average figures, reduction in emission was rather marked. RSPs and SO2 have been declining. However, for ozone is on the rise. Besides, there was a rise of 28% during that period. For NO2, a slight reduction of 6%. But then for roadside monitoring stations, an increase of 6%. And then paragraph 3 of the paper mentions that due to the aging of vehicles, there's been rising emission such that roadside NO2 has been rising by 6%. Well, this explanation is not satisfactory because in the past few years, quite a number of things have been done, including vehicular emission. As for aging vehicles, relevant work has been done. I won't repeat the details. But there's no improvement on nitrogen oxides. That's worrying. I'd also like to ask about marine vessels. We did quite a lot of things as well. For example, last year, we have a regulation on light diesel. We encourage marine vessels coming to Hong Kong to use fuel with lower sulfur content. However, for shore power, progress has been slow. I think the Kai Tak cruise terminal the government should give us an answer on shore power. And then we have to know the situation for other marine vessels, big or small. If a marine vessel has come to berth in Hong Kong, if diesel is still used to generate lighting, etc., on the vessel, is not satisfactory. So we're concerned about diesel, shore power, etc. So how can we ensure that marine vessels berthing in Hong Kong use cleaner fuel? What have we done? Under Secretary, next time we'll come and explain shore power to you. We'll focus on the cruise terminal, but we've already conducted a number of studies, so we should look at how technology has been advancing. For the container terminals in Kwai Chung, the private enterprises. For Hong Kong, if we want to promote shore power, there are a lot of considerations. So next time we'll disclose more information in our mastery. Secondly, in future we can find an opportunity to explain to you marine vessels. We now have 2 pieces of legislation. Together with the mainland and Shenzhen, we've started discussion. What will happen on the mainland side? Because we're mutually affecting each other. So insofar as Hong Kong is concerned, what more can we do under our control? I hope that by the end of this year, we can have a discussion again. Mr. Tung Ni-jae? Thank you, Chairman. Of course, the government has worked hard on improving air quality. I'd like to emphasize that, like other colleagues, I'm concerned about air quality and public health. Some study reports say that RSPs may have adverse impact on the elderly persons, and for those with heart problems, the impact may be more serious. The Undersecretary has promised to provide us with more information. That's necessary because we would like to know the exact impact on public health. That's very important. Besides, I'd like to follow up on paras 12 and 13 of the paper in relation to low emission zones. These zones are good because we would like to replace business vehicles like buses with higher emissions. But we must give them time, so it's good to have low emission zones. But what about the bus companies? When they deploy their buses, what buses will be deployed to which routes? Will they be shifting problems from one district to another? If they can do their work better in that regard, the whole exercise can be more fruitful and effective. So I'd like the government to do more. As for paragraph 25 of the paper, it said that the government is prepared to develop more renewable energy. What does that mean? We know that renewable energy is more expensive per unit than conventional electricity. So the government's role must be stronger. You cannot just rely on commercial enterprises. Otherwise, progress and effect won't be so satisfactory. So in terms of direction and approach, I'd like the government to tell us more. Undersecretary, concerning renewable energy, we have a consultation document on the 2 power companies, and this is part of the topics covered. We do need the cooperation of the 2 power companies. This is not just related to air pollution. This is actually more related to energy. this subject is rather complicated. Mr. Jay and other members, during summer, maybe after you come back from your holidays, we can have some informal exchanges on the subject. By that time, we'll have completed our public consultation exercise. We need exchanges and we need mutual learning. Well, yes, Mr. Chairman, one thing is very important. Well, if you only say that members of the public are willing to pay more, then it's very difficult for you to get support. You cannot say that members of the public are willing to pay a higher electricity tariff because they want renewable energy. Well, the whole world is doing this. You have to invest more resources into this before you get better effects. Otherwise, if you only ask Hong Kong people to pay more to buy renewable energy, I suspect the progress will be very slow. So you have to consider this. As the Undersecretary said, maybe we can exchange our views on other occasions. Mr. Chen Hanpan. Thank you, Chairman. All along, I'm very concerned about shore power. Of course, to turn off your engines is very important, but shore power is also very important. I also have a number of doubts. You see, for the new cruise terminal, we only have several cruises berthing every year. If we are to use shore power and Kwai Chung is subject to air pollution, then I don't understand the reason. Maybe we shouldn't start at all. As for marine vessels using high sulfur fuel, starting from 2010, we encourage these vessels to change fuel upon berthing in Hong Kong. I'd like to know the feedback. Is it enthusiastic, and how many marine vessels have participated? And then since 2012, you should have monitored the effectiveness. What about the air quality around Kwai Chung container port? Is there any improvement? And starting from this year, the fuel change would be mandatory. Sulfur content will be reduced, but what about PM 2.5? For RSPs, will they decrease? Because for aquatic or water activities, they are also very polluting. Maybe Mr. Lai or Mr. Mok can give you an answer. We have cited data in previous papers. Deputy Director, thank you, Mr. Chan, for your question. We launched the voluntary scheme in 2010, that is to encourage marine vessels to change fuel upon berthing. But that's voluntary, and that will incur extra fuel cost on the shipping companies. Since September 2012 up to the end of last year, the overall participation rate was only 13%. Annually, we got 30,000 vessel trips. So, to make the campaign more effective, just in the middle of this year, the new piece of legislation was enacted. We thank you for your support. And starting from July this year, all marine vessels have to shift to low sulfur diesel. That is 0.05%, much lower than the international threshold. So this will hugely reduce SO2 emission, and that will also be helpful in terms of RSPs. But the decrease won't be as marked as that for SO2. So upon implementation, we'll closely monitor the harbor, particularly the Kwaichong container port, where there are more marine vessels, to see how air quality will change. In other words, although we've done a lot, and SO2 has decreased, but PM 2.5 or RSPs on the whole, there's no market improvement. Deputy Director, there was an increase, but the increase won't be as marked as SO2, a 60 to 70% improvement from 3.5% to 0.05%. So Kwaichong residents will have to breathe in RSPs continuously. Well, we'll try to control vehicular emission.
Because our main source of pollution in Kwaichong is from ferries, and so sulfur. 37% of the pollutants are from marine transport. So I believe most of it is from the Kwaichong container terminals, and there are residential developments nearby. So I'll ask them to continue to breathe in RSP. Why isn't onshore power supply very important? Now we cannot rely on one single measure to tackle all the problems. So for PM 2.5, this is a more complicated issue, and it's also related to the atmospheric situation referred to by Mr. Mok, and we should not overlook the effectiveness of onshore power supply in other ports. This is the major measure. Now, Mr. Chen, your time is up. If you're interested, you can queue up for the second round. I have to control time. Mr. Wu Chi-wai. Thank you, Chairman. We have various policies to improve our air pollution, and it may take some time for them to be effective, and we may have to wait until the end of this year to see the whole picture. At this stage, I don't want to criticize too much, but in other European cities, we can see that all these measures have their own limits or limitations. So in these big cities, they promote bicycle-friendly environment, so that transport can be zero polluting. Unfortunately, in Hong Kong, we only provide recreational cycle tracks. When we discuss air pollution, I think we should let the public know the health bill due to air pollution. In research in European cities, we can see that cycling is an effective means to improve health and to improve air quality. Since we always stress that we will do our very best in Hong Kong to make our city bike-friendly, but of course, as a bike lover, I don't share this view. So will you agree with me, Under Secretary? If Hong Kong as a city can be bike-friendly, can you conduct a study into the possible health effects? Now, even for new roads and carriageway, you do not use bike-friendly as a factor in your design. So I'd like to know, in designing new roads, can you factor in the requirement for them to be bike-friendly as well, so that when we have the resources to make our city bike-friendly, we have existing network available? And Under Secretary, please don't tell us that you're going to build more cycle tracks, because having bicycle tracks is different from making our city bike friendly. So can you try to consider the use of bicycles to as a means to improve our air pollution? Now, I do understand Mr. Wu's question, but I'm afraid I don't know how to answer it. He asked whether we can do some studies to measure the health benefits bike-friendly policy can bring. How are we going to conduct this research? I really don't know. And whether for new roads we can have such provisions. Now, it all depends on our priorities. Now, there is no need for me to say that it is an other bureau's terms of reference, but this issue has been raised by the community and considered by the government internally. But we haven't got any conclusion, because it is related to town planning and also our overall transport policy. So, Undersecretary, can you bring back this issue to the government for discussion? But we have been talking about being bike friendly for a long time, but the buck has been passed from one department to another. After all, we're talking about measures to improve air pollution. So can you take the lead so that this can be incorporated into our town planning principles, so that there may be the possibility of making Hong Kong bike friendly? Yes, I know that many people are interested in this subject. I'm willing to bring this back to the administration for discussion, but I cannot promise you anything. Dr. Kenneth Chan, you have been so strict to me, but to other members you've been very lenient. Some members had as much as 8-9 minutes. All right. This is already May, and replacement of pre-Euro vehicles should be due by the end of this year. I hope that early next year you can come back to tell us the situation for Euro 1 vehicles. There should be enough information by then to gauge the effectiveness of this scheme. And please consider what other measures, what incentives can you provide to encourage more people to apply for the ex gratia payment? Since you have such an excellent policy, why don't you do more to make it, to enhance the take-up rate? I know I'm a bit greedy, and I know the administration has to balance the interests of different parties and to defer the phase-out date. So can you consider advancing the phasing date? So for Euro 3, can you provide some incentives to encourage people to take up the ex gratia payment earlier? And air quality has everything to do with public health. I know this paper is mainly on various measures to improve our air quality, but it is also related to public health. So when we discuss these issues again, can we discuss the issues of on the number of days where the air pollution in Hong Kong has exceeded the maximum level, and what measures are there to address the situation? For instance, outdoor PE lessons for students and workers that have to engage in outdoor works on such days, so on and so forth. And lastly, along Central Wan Chai and Admiralty, we will have many new high-rises. There are 8 to 6 new sites to be developed. I'm really worried because on the one hand, we're talking about improving air quality. On the other hand, we are attracting more traffic to these busy areas in town. I hope there can be close liaison between government departments to improve our air quality. Such big clusters of buildings here may be counterproductive. So when you discuss air quality improvement measures, please look at the reality. Thank you. I note that the Undersecretary has promised to give us a comprehensive report by the end of this year to tell us the overall effectiveness of all the measures put in place to improve air quality. So, Undersecretary, please note the issue raised by Mr. Albert Chan, emissions caused by aircraft, bike-friendly policies, and if members have other concerns, please give us a list in writing and for forwarding to the administration. I suggest we go on to the next item, and that is Producer Responsibility Scheme on Glass Beverage Bottles. Ms. Christine Low will stay to answer our questions. We also have Mr. Samson Lai, Assistant Director, and Dr. Alan Lam, Principal EPO. This afternoon, I've got an open letter from the Chairman of the Association of Wine, an open letter to the Secretary for the Environment, Mr. Wong Kam, saying it is a proposal on legislation, and the administration may consider drafting the relevant legislation after today's discussion. Thank you. This paper is on the latest situation of the Producer Responsibility Scheme, PRS, on glass beverage bottles, and also the framework of our proposed statutory regulation. In 2013, we consulted the community, and with the general support of the community, in end 2013, we reported to the Council that we were going to legislate for the PRS for glass beverage bottles. We will charge a recycling fee, and we will invite contractors to recover such bottles for turning them into glass paving blocks, so on and so forth, so that glass bottles can be turned from waste to valuable resources. We've included collection points in residential developments so that it is now more convenient for people to recover or to recycle glass bottles. And for the uses of recycled glass bottles, we also have new developments. We have been working on the draft, and if everything goes smoothly, we intend to introduce a bill to this Council within this legislative year. Hands up, please. Dr. Lowe Kok and Mr. Tony C. Dr. Lowe, thank you. If glass bottles can be properly recycled and reused, of course, that is the best solution, so that we don't need to extend our landfills or add to the burden of our landfills. Many communities around the world have done quite a good job. For those of us who have visited other places will know that in some cities in Japan and Taiwan, you don't really have a dustbin for dumping glass bottles. We have to take them back to our hotels. However, To make the cycle work, we must have facilities for processing such resources. For instance, in the Council, we are vetting a bill on waste, electronic waste, and finally the administration has accepted our suggestion and is willing to fund the construction of a big factory to dismantle such waste.
In the paper, certain production lines are introduced, but the introduction is not comprehensive enough. Even for the waste electronic products, the introduction is rather comprehensive. That is, how many facilities do we need to handle all waste electronic products every year? But then for glass bottles, I don't see such comprehensive planning. It's not mentioned either. If there's any insufficiency, how will the government make sure that the facilities can do their work well? Well, Mr. Chairman, glass bottles are different from waste electronic products. Glass bottles are simpler. They don't contain toxic materials. We just crush them to turn them into the size needed for construction. For existing production lines, we have the two manufacturers of eco-pavers. They told us that they can produce 30 to 40,000 tons. And then we sent a clear message to the industry that this direction is the one we've chosen, and one investor has chosen to invest in one of the production lines. Eventually, which recycler can win the bid is something for the next step in terms of planning. So the amount of investment is much smaller than that for waste electronic products. So the feedback from the industry has been good. The handling will be simpler and more expeditious. So we rely on the industry. A follow-up question. Commercially, I'd like to know more about the recycling of glass bottles. Well, AD, can we have some responses? Because if we can do better in E-trees, more glass bottles can be recovered. What's the present situation? Commercially, at the moment, we rely on the hotel and catering business. This has been on the go for several years. In bar districts for several years already, by way of a fund, we rely on the industry for recovery and recycling. We'll launch a full exercise in the business sector, so the scheme will be gradually expanded. Dr. KWOK will to turn waste into energy and how to make good use of waste glass bottles. Or Mr. Tony Tse, we basically support the government's measures. In paragraph 5 of the paper, we're told that the coverage is rather broad, but then the effectiveness is not so tremendous, because every year is around 6,000 metric tons only. But you've set your target at 50,000 metric tons. 50,000 metric tons is still not equivalent to 100% of the glass bottles, I guess. Now, in the past, you already had many collection points. The coverage rate is rather high. Why is it that the recovery rate is not so satisfactory? Of course, glass bottles are rather heavy. is a problem to transport them for a long distance. And of course, there may be problems with the recyclers as well. As the paper mentions, in future, we would like to make use of the waste glass bottles. Paragraph 6 of the paper apparently emphasizes public education. In fact, recovery is already a problem. Clean recycling may be a bigger problem. I'm worried that you haven't yet done your first step well enough. If you proceed to the next step, you may be too ambitious. So my first question is, why is the recycling rate so low given so many collection points? And will you be too ambitious? Well, I think that's one of the emphases this year for environmental protection. Mr. Chairman, yes, this is one of our foci this year. After expanding our network, the recycling rate has increased, but of course still far away from our objective. Paragraph 4 mentions that the wastage rate is rather high, so we need to consider resources as well. For the time being, or in the past year, we focused on residential units. Dr. Low mentioned the commercial enterprises. We've not expanded our scheme yet to them. We'll take note of that in future. As for residential units, to set up collection points is the first step, because even with a collection point, that doesn't mean that the whole block of residents will use the point. Anyway, after setting up collection points, we'll encourage clean recycling of glass bottles. All these have to be done concurrently. If members of the public only take out the glass bottles without cleaning them, downstream there will be bigger problems. In the past, we observed that bottles holding saucers might generate hygiene problems and were very unpopular for the recyclers, and eventually they ended up in the landfills, thus hampering confidence as well. We'll further explain to the public that these glass bottles will have outlets. In the past few years, there's this misunderstanding that these waste glass bottles can only be used to produce eco-pavers, which only have limited uses. In fact, for the industry, these waste glass bottles won't just be converted into eco-pavers. They can be converted into other resources as well. Mr. Wu Chi-wai. Thank you, Chairman. Well, I think we need some more time to discuss the PRS. Well, last time we were concerned about the levies collected. Can we set up an effective collection network to attain the effectiveness that we want? And this time we received this letter from a trade association with the same query. That is, after paying, how can we make sure that the recycling of waste glass bottles can attain the effectiveness that we want? The association was concerned that the collection points have already covered 69% of our population. And now 6,000 odd metric tons have been collected only. With such a high coverage rate of the whole population, how can we ensure that this scheme can very effectively enhance the recycling rate? So I'd like to have some responses from the Bureau. How can we satisfy these associations so that they know that by adopting the scheme, they're helping society? So we really want to set up an effective network by setting up these collection points. So after paying, how can we ensure the effectiveness of this network after setting up collection points? And when can we attain the target of 50,000 metric tons? Under Secretary? Well, this is also our internal concern. We published a consultation document to solicit public support, and we're collaborating with certain organizations on household wastes. We know how to work on our network, and now we're extending the scheme to F&B establishments. So we'll do this step by step. We're all learning what to do. In future, we need this network. We have to legislate. We have to promulgate guidelines. So we're in the process of learning. As for the details, I defer to our colleague, Assistant Director. Mr. Chairman, our work covers two areas. First of all, for residential units, for statistics on waste glass bottles, for F&B, eateries are also producing a lot of waste glass bottles. So in the past, society has improved on cognition. If we want to have a high degree of effectiveness, we have to work on the F&B establishments, the catering business. So in the coming year, we'd like to step up collaboration with them. Different F&B establishments should collaborate with us in every step so that we can develop clean recycling processes. In the past, we did contact this particular trade association and other trade associations. By paying a levy, they would like to help with environmental protection. In that regard, apart from the government, the F&B industry and the suppliers are also duty-bound to participate. So we'll collaborate with them. Well, after speaking at length, he has not given us any specifics. So any specific plan? AD? Well, where and when appropriate, we can arrange visits for members to observe the concrete details. Next, Dr. Elizabeth Quat. Mr. Chairman, I support the recycling of glass bottles. In the Sha Tin District Council, a few years ago, we already collaborated with the local community and NGOs by trying to collect waste glass bottles. Although NGOs play the role of recyclers in Sha Tin, the effectiveness is rather limited. Therefore, in Sha Tin, not all housing estates are covered yet. Many residents feel that they can't find glass bottle collection points. And most members of the public have very weak knowledge about cleaning glass bottles. And then the transportation of glass bottles is rather costly. So most will pay the collectors for transporting the glass bottles to the recyclers. At the moment, we have two recyclers, two factories. I contacted one of them. Well, after all, they don't have money to buy waste glass bottles. They have to rely on subvention schemes run by the government. So the whole recovery and recycling chain has not been formed yet. Well, there's a major principles, polluters pay, and then PRS. But then from the paper, I don't see a clear definition of polluter and producer. For recycling, you would like to have 3 contractors in Hong Kong, on Hong Kong Island, Kowloon, and the New Territories, respectively. So are you going to give resources to them for transportation? And then they can choose which recycler they want, or will the government choose the recycler for them? Assistant Director, when we have the 3 contractors in place, then under the polluter pays principle, there will be a piece of legislation to regulate costs. So the levies collected will be used for that purpose. For these 3 contractors, they will respectively be responsible for their own areas for collection and handling. By handling, I mean they have to crush the glass bottles and bring them to the downstream manufacturer for suitable use. That means the eco-paver manufacturers. And then in future, if new uses are developed, such glass bottles will also be supplied.
So for these recyclers, they must find a way out for their glass bottles. They have to ensure that the glass bottles will not be dumped at landfills. Well, there is already a way out, because through green procurement, the government has supported the use of concrete paving blocks or eco-pavers. We're using about 5,000 to 6,000 tons per year, and we have also liaised with the Development Bureau. After these glass bottles are broken down, they can be used as fill material, and the consumption of such fill materials is higher than the production rate, and in the long term they can also be used to replace river sand. So when the glass bottles are broken down to the to different sizes, there will be different uses for them. Dr. Kenneth Chen, we have discussed this scheme for a number of times. I hope that when the bill is presented to us, we can be clearer about the flow and the details. And for the Trade Association of Wine, I think the administration has approached them. And please answer their concerns about operating costs for the public to consider. I believe there is still time for you to carry out this discussion. Members asked about the commercial operating models and whether there are any outlets of the recycled glass materials. I believe these issues have been addressed. I'd like to talk about exemption, because this paper, as well as previous discussions, have mentioned exemption. If some producers have their own recycling facilities, then exemption will be needed. But in November 2013, you talk about 90% exemption. I hope that it won't be so high. How can you ensure that glass bottles would not leak out of your network? I hope that these glass bottles will not be exempted. What if these glass bottles are dumped at landfills, and if they go back to the recycling system where they have to pay $1 per liter, then this is also no good, because you are transferring the cost to other business that have to pay the cost. So there is no mention of this 90% recycling rate in this paper. In fact, 90% is not high enough. I want 100%. And you talked about to attain a certain degree of recycling, then there can be subject to meeting certain performance standards and other terms and conditions, then there can be an exemption. But the original policy objective is to achieve a very high level of recycling. Perhaps you should not. Perhaps you would like to negotiate with companies one by one. Then I am worried. if you can offer exemption depending on the capacity of that company, then you will bring out confusing message to the public. Can you please supplement? No, the question is not allowing these glass bottles to be exempted, but I think recycling and reuse is most efficient. Some beverage manufacturers have their past experience of attaining 80 to 90% recycling of glass bottles, but that may be possible within a short period of time, and in the long term we need to give them some flexibility. So perhaps we should not be too strict about that 90%. And in their operation, some glass bottles might be lost or might be broken, so it's not easy to achieve 90%, but 80% is commonly attained by different manufacturers. We're pleased to see that some beverage manufacturers that didn't recycle their bottles in the past have inquired about this, and I think exemption is indeed meaningful. Well, at first you told us that some manufacturers could attain 80 to 90%, and you would want to remove that threshold. And I think you are encouraging people to obtain this exemption by proving that they have the recycling capability. I don't think this is not what we want to see. If in the legislation you do not fix a certain percentage of recycling, then it is rather dangerous. If you just say that you will allow exemption subject to meeting certain performance standards and other terms and conditions, then every time you negotiate with a beverage manufacturer, it may bargain with you if you do not have a fixed percentage of recycling rate. I think we share your view, we share your goal. Dr. Kenneth Chen. And how we will, but as for how we're going to tackle it, we will address it in the bill. If the recycling schemes are reasonably effective, they should be able to achieve recycling rates of 80 to 90%. If they can't attain that, then we will probably not give any exemption. I also support the PRS system, but compared with plastic bags and electronic waste, I think the policy here is not consistent with the other schemes. For plastic bags and electrical waste, we levy a charge on the consumers, but for glass bottles, we charge the importers. In the Bills Committee to discuss plastic bag levy, we asked whether the levy can be on manufacturers and importers, and the administration said that the levy must be on consumers to serve as an incentive for members of the public to save, to reduce the use of plastic bags and electronic waste. But how come for glass bottles you will impose the levy on importers? This seems to depart from your principles for other wastes. And secondly, under the proposal of the administration, the importer has to carry out an audit once a year, and there should be several rounds of reporting to the administration. For small wine traders, this may be difficult and will be costly for them. So what measures do you have to alleviate that burden? Assistant Director. For plastic bags, the levy intends to serve as a financial incentive to encourage consumers to use less plastic bags. But for electrical waste and also glass bottles, now for the 4 electrical appliances and computers, they are very commonly used, and we have no intention to contain the use of such appliances, and that applies to glass bottles too. But we have to levy a charge to implement the polluter pays principle. For electrical waste, after a discussion, we believe that the levy should be imposed on the supplier, and this is consistent with the approach for glass bottles. Because if we charge it at the retail level, there are so many retail outlets in Hong Kong, and we do not have a GST, and we may affect the SMEs. And for the Trade Association and Wine, we have done some assessment, and we have simplified procedures for smaller operations, and this will be addressed in the detailed regulations. Mr. Wu Chi-wai, 2 minutes. Very simple. We have several schemes for recycling resources. For instance, one for electronic waste, and this one is for glass bottles. I think the most expensive part of these recycling schemes is logistics. I'd like to ask whether the administration tends to set up a bigger logistic system so that the government will use it as a means to support recycling. Because the most expensive part in recycling is a logistic system. Can you have a more effective consolidation so that we can have an effective logistic system for recycling resources? For electric waste and glass bottles, the voluntary schemes are very small in scale. As pointed out in the paper, we are only collecting a few thousands of tons of glass bottles, and for electronic waste, roughly the same. But under the scheme here, we're going to recycle 5,000 tons for both glass bottles and electronic waste. There can be several fleets to collect such waste. And during public consultation, there was the suggestion that one contractor should be responsible for recovering all the glass bottles in a territory. But perhaps we decided that it was too risky, and we will go for three contractors. If the collectory is territory, since the collection will be territory-wide, there will be effectiveness in the logistics system. Mr. Paul Z. The intention is to subsidize the recycling industry. I'd like to know whether there is anything to change consumers' behavior and for them to help in recycling. Because if the levy is on the suppliers, then there is no incentive for consumers to change their behavior. We have a few items in progress. Why do you want to implement the scheme for glass bottles first? Now, perhaps it will be more effective if you carry out a few schemes together. And for the levy, I think you're going to charge once every 3 months. Then For the wine industry, of course, the outlets of wine will be more seriously affected. The operating costs will be higher. We want Hong Kong to be a wine trading hub by first cutting tax on wine or duty on wine. For wine, for re-export to the mainland, can it be exempted from this fee? Now, for a municipal waste charging scheme, we're working on it already. And for glass bottles, well, the bill will be presented soon. And will they be introduced at different times? Of course, I can't be sure, but I think it's about time we start working on the legislation. And for recycling of electronic waste and glass bottles, if we levy the fee at a retail level, it would be rather difficult, because for some SMEs, their retail network is very wide and it may be a bit difficult.
We would like to promote the habit of recycling glass bottles. When we talk to the catering business, we mentioned that point. So we'd like to have collaboration on this. So we would like to see the same for residential units. As for the collection of levy every 3 or 4 months, the same applies to the plastic bag levy. So we propose the same for waste glass bottles. And this trade association queried whether this would become a very heavy burden on the industry. So we'll discuss or consider whether or not there should be a reduction for certain industries. Well, when we're small, we always returned milk bottles, drink bottles in return for a refund. So maybe we should cultivate the same habit amongst the public. Well, if you just ask them to pay 50 cents or $1, they won't find that a heavy burden, so they may just dump glass bottles anywhere. Will you consider that? Well, Mr. Chairman, this has something to do with exemption, as I mentioned. In fact, some producers do collect waste glass bottles for other uses. For collecting glass bottles to convert them into construction materials, at the moment we don't yet have any particular recycler for this. Second round, Mr. Kenneth Chan. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to follow up on my first round question. I'd like to have some examples from the government so that we know what requirements, threshold, or specifications we're considering when it comes to exemption. Well, I know of certain examples, but they may not cover all examples in the beverage industry. My habit is to look at the areas of exemption first, because you have to explain to those being regulated why the others are exempted. So what are the reasons for exemption? Well, just now the Bureau mentioned some non-statutory measures. Well, maybe they're using more relaxed language, so to speak. But maybe you should give them a specification so that even those exempted know what rules and regulations to follow. Now, glass bottles may break. All those who produce or sell glass bottles or beverages in glass bottles will definitely consider the chance of broken glass bottles. So you really have to explain this to us. You mentioned 80 to 90%, so where goes the remaining 10%? Oh, they're broken. So you have to tell us the specifications and requirements for exemption. Otherwise, in future, this PRS will be subject to doubts and queries. Mr. Chairman, can you give me more time? We're on glass bottles. Under the broad framework of PRS, you're going to add a definition for glass or glass containers. You say that for this stage, you won't regulate food, but then cleaned food bottles have to be recycled or collected and recycled as well. So I think you have to spell that out clearly as well. That is, in this stage, even some food glass bottles have to be collected and recovered. Although we don't yet have a clear timetable, when handling this piece of legislation, we may ask the same question. We'll also ask you for a future plan. So officials, please listen to Mr. Chan's views. Mr. Paul Tse. Apparently, the AD has not answered the question on transshipment. Will we only impose a levy on those glass bottles being used locally? The levy won't be imposed on transshipment. Well, what about those entering Hong Kong first before being re-exported? Well, it doesn't matter. We'll require a quarterly report. If the glass bottles are imported and then re-exported, they just state this very clearly in their quarterly reports. Dr. KWOK, I'd like to follow up on my first round question. Well, commercially, how are these glass bottles collected and recycled? In the bar streets of Bangkok, waste glass bottles converge at certain collection points for collection and recycling. If this can be comprehensively promoted, waste glass bottles can be handled properly. As the AD explained, at the moment, some production lines are already working on the same, that is to convert waste glass bottles into eco-pavers, etc. So certain supply chains are already operating. Maybe the AD can spend some time to explain to us the actual operations of these production lines. And at the moment, for such commercial recycling, what's the recycling rate? AD, Mr. Chairman, the paper mentions that we rely on the scheme for hotels. Every year we collect around 700 metric tons from them. And then under the ECF, we have several NGOs involved in the same. For the bar streets and the catering industry, the recycling rate is rather low because in the past we focused on the households by enhancing the knowledge and awareness. Upcoming will focus more on the catering industry, the bars, etc., which concentrate on Yao Chim, Mong, and Wan Chai. So we'll enhance the scheme so that more waste glass bottles can be recycled for conversion into usable materials. Dr. Low, Mr. Chairman, if we can successfully launch this, the effectiveness would be very marked. As he mentioned, bars concentrate on several districts only. So if we can model on what these bars are doing, then the commercial entities can save money also because they need to pay the waste collectors anyway. So if recyclers can directly take these waste glass bottles away, these F&B establishments also benefit. So apart from doing publicity among households, legislating and so forth, you should as soon as possible do more publicity and promotion in the business sector and to improve your supply chain, then you attain a higher effectiveness. So government, you've heard him. Mr. KWOK, you're late. Well, sorry, I was with the Eastern District Council just now. The paper mentions that basically these waste glass bottles are for conversion into eco-pavers only, a very limited range of products. So can you widen that range? And then can you educate the public to pre-clean the waste glass bottles so that more recyclers will be willing to do recycling? And one more question. What about the eco park? Is it saturated already? Can it accommodate other industries like the glass recycling industry? I heard from the market that some businesses are also interested in it. AD, well, the eco park will continuously review their tenancy arrangements. When we plan for the recycling of glass bottles, apart from eco-pavers, public works projects can also use the waste glass as fills, and in the long run they can replace river sand. Work has already started. Paragraph 6 of the paper already mentioned a new design for the recycling bins, and we got an API. And in the Eastern District, as Mr. Kwok might have noted, the scheme will start soon. We've started it in Sha Tin. So we'll examine whether such a style of publicity and promotion will be more effective in local communities. Well, he did not give me a concrete answer for the eco park. Well, time's up, and we have to hand the venue to another meeting at 4:30 sharp. So officials, please take note of members' questions just now, as well as their comments, and please refer to them when you draft your legislation. Item 6 on the agenda, any other business? No other business. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.